Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Blue Podcast, episode number 4. Today we have an interesting topic where I'm going to be talking about is it legal to steal in California. You may have seen some news here and there about people saying, like, oh, you can take whatever you want in California unless it's a certain amount of money. Or maybe you just heard, like, oh, you can go to the grocery store and, like, boom, phone, I'll take it. No, it does not work like that, right? So, short answer, okay? If you guys are just looking for a yes or no, it is not legal, okay? Just straight up, it is not legal. But there's a lot of technicalities for you to understand why people are saying it, right? And why you are looking at this online. So, I'm gonna be talking to you guys first about the difference between what a misdemeanor is and a felony. Now, a misdemeanor is a it's kind of it's still a crime, right? But you're gonna receive least harsher consequences than a felony, right? So you can still go to jail if you do misdemeanors, but it is only up to a year, and that's in extreme cases of misdemeanor. Now felony is obviously more advanced, like crimes, and this is where we are going to talk about why uh, people are saying that it is legal, right? Now, to understand this, right, we already know what the difference between misdemeanor and felony is. In kind of, I will touch into it a little bit more in a bit, but we're gonna have to go and look back at what all of this kind of started. Okay, there's a lot of crime before, right? Like California specifically. There's been a lot of just crime historically or whatnot. And in 2014, they did a Proposition 47, which added laws to prevent mass imprisonment. Now, how did they do this, right? It was a very controversial proposition, a law that went through. Some people agree with it to this day, some others highly disagree. Anyways, essentially, and this has been going for a while, it made it so that you can not go to jail for doing some crimes like shoplifting, petty theft, receiving stolen property, forgery, writing bad checks under $950, some drug possession offenses, yada yada. Anyways, essentially, jails were starting to be very, very full. And if you're caught in jail before, you could be put in jail for many, many years, right? So they made a law where if you are caught stealing anything under $950, you can be passed by with a misdemeanor if caught. And so you can go to jail up to a year depending on how much, but most likely you'll only be fined up to $1,000, right? Now it depends on how you do it, how violent you are, or whatnot. So I mean, it worked, right? So after a certain amount of years, it worked. There's way less people in jail because of this, right? But I mean, if you were to steal a TV that's like $800 after tax, because bear in mind, tax is super, super important when it comes to this whole counting thing, because you can get something that's $950, but if it passes the value after tax, it could be a felony, right? So if you're to get a TV that's 800, 850 after tax, you you could just get a fine of $1,000 maybe, you know, and you can have a TV. So like worst case scenario for you, you're gonna have to pay like 150, maybe go to jail for 1 or 2 years depending on how and the case specifically. If you just go in there and be very violent or whatnot, it just depends in physical actions. Like it's just very complicated in that sense. But you're gonna be receiving less harsh, uh, uh, like consequences than if you were to steal something over $950, right? Now, the next step is Proposition 36, which was added in November 2024, and this one's more recent, and this is the reason why it's becoming so prevalent in the news again, and it's becoming viral online. Of it is legal, or like it's in the law that you can steal. Like if you go to San Francisco, you can just boom, take a monster, go, leave, run away. Like no. So actually, this Proposition 36 that they added recently made it so it's harder for you to steal, because for many many years, for like 8 to 10 years, right, it was it was easier for you to steal, right, and not suffer as many consequences. And what they did in November 2024 is that they added laws that will punish repeated offenders, right, and organized crime. Like, so if you see the footage and you can tell that it is organized, if it's a group and they're very like highly intent to like go there and steal, then you can be charged for a felony and not a misdemeanor, right? So you can be suffering more consequences if you steal nowadays. Now, there's a lot of technicalities when it comes to this, right? And I'm just kind of talking about the overview of the situation. But I wanted to show you guys real quick how the situation is, right? Before we like get into Proposition 36 details, I want to show you guys how bad the situation is when it comes to like crimes around California, and why people think worldwide, or even people in California, is legal to steal. Because in the news, like this is Fox News, right? You will see things like this.
Organized retail theft has become such a hot button. Control shoplifting. Organized retail theft has become such a hot button issue that it's now a point of focus in the upcoming gubernatorial recall election. Former San Diego Mayor Kevin Faulconer spoke.
Yeah, as you can see there, those videos, you're going to be able to find them anywhere, especially like on Instagram or whatnot.
Retail theft. San Francisco Police Chief Bill Scott supports the legislation.
It's very sad to see San Francisco go down like this, right? But personally, I live in California, so I mean, if we look at California, this is a Ross that's pretty close to me. It's kind of crazy. Yeah, so I mean, as you can see there, like you can find these videos everywhere. Like especially in Long Beach, you have that account where I've seen some crazy ass shit, and people will see those type of videos and they'll be like, oh, so then it is completely legal to just steal, because you see they're doing it and no one is stopping them, right? But I mean, if you were to be put in the scenario of the security guy and the security guards, right? Will you like personally risk your life for your job? Like, if you see them take something and run away, until what degree are you gonna be chasing them down? If you chase them down, then what? You gotta deal with all the paperwork. You gotta deal with this. You gotta deal with this, and that. So I mean, part of it is the fact that in this country, especially in California, or not especially in California, but in California, there's also like guns and there's firearm and there's all these type of stuff that can get you severely hurt, especially if you're a security guard. It just kind of makes sense in a way if you put your mind in why would these people go and risk their lives for their job, And so a lot of places, I've personally seen it, okay? I've been, like, I remember going to Staples and, like, getting a couple photocopies for a package I wanted to send, for a package slip. And I just saw somebody go in there. They went to the back, they grab a shit ton of things, and then just walk through the door. And I mean, they kind of looked at each other. There's a guy that went out and said, like, oh, do you want to pay for this? And they were like, no. And they just walked out. But I mean, if you're a worker and you're getting paid minimum wage, like, why are you going to, like, deal with these people, Obviously, it depends on where you're stealing, but especially, like, smaller stores or stores that don't have any security, it makes sense why people go and steal, because even if they're caught, they're gonna be only suffering like small consequences unless there's security footage of you stealing a total or a grand total of $950 in that store, or across multiple stores. But it's very hard for people to document you stealing a grand total of $950 unless you're stealing like very, very big things like TVs, or if you go to Staples, maybe like printers or something. I don't fucking know. So going back to Proposition 36, it added laws that will punish repeated offenders, right? So it's actually technically harder for you to steal nowadays. And it was so controversial because people thought that the problem of mass imprisonment was going to go back to what it was like many years ago, right? They were saying, like, oh, this law is going to make it so that jails are full again, you know? But I mean, this split people so much because some will say like, "Oh, it's gonna make jails full again," and then others agree. Like I personally think that it's kind of a necessary step for crime rate because if you look at California, crime rate is shooting out the roof. It's getting kind of out of hand, and I've personally seen it, and it is getting a little crazy in my opinion. So, anyways, once again, is it legal to steal? Well, no, right? There are many factors on why people online say so, and it's a very big myth for people to be saying these type of things. And a lot of stores do not enforce or cite misdemeanors when theft happens in their eyes. And honestly, like as I've said, I've seen a good amount of it happening in stores, and their employees will not do anything. But I mean, stealing is still punishable, but the laws like will make you suffer more consequences now than before, even though crime rate is higher. You as a person, if you try to go steal, will suffer more consequences. You can get more in trouble. Like companies will act up and will go after you, especially if you're stealing like repeatedly. So I mean, I wouldn't recommend stealing, honestly. But I mean, it's kind of up to you. Because you're still gonna suffer consequences. You can't just go to the store and steal something. It's not as easy as that. So, anyways, yeah, that is kind of that for this section, and we're gonna move on to another section in just a bit. Okay, so we're moving on to the next section of the podcast. And bear in mind, this is a podcast with your guys' suggestions. The first one was actually suggested to me by my aunt. She wanted me to talk about uh, if it's legal to steal in California because it's a big thing going on. I think worldwide more than anything, like big conspiracy theory, whatnot, or people are just not informed, and it helped me inform myself a little bit better as well, and I can explain to you guys how everything's really going off. And the next section we're going to be talking about right now is how tax write-off works, and this is a suggestion that my friend gave me because we're talking about starting a business together, Airbnb business, right? And we were talking about state taxes, federal taxes, and uh, how much of our money we will be able to keep after each year, right? And if you're if you're getting paid by your job less than five or not 500, less than $100,000 a year, it's very possible that you're not paying taxes because every paycheck you are paying a certain percentage that towards the end of the year they'll actually give you back, right? But there's different types of uh, income that can make it so that you have to pay taxes, like YouTube, or there's so many different, like if you own your own company, right, then you're obviously not getting paychecks with taxes already on top of that. And you got to inform yourself what state has what percentage of taxes. There's some loud thing going on in the back. It doesn't matter. So like California, it starts off at 10%, and then it increases depending on your income, right? But for me, since I'm not getting paid as much right now, I was paying 10% at first, my first year, And then in my second year, I went up to like 11%, and I actually got money back instead of me paying money. But in the future, when I start getting other type of money, I want to learn how to minimize the amount of taxes that I gotta be paying for, right? And so I made a chart for you guys to kind of explain how it works, right? And so, say you have a company, right, that is going to generate $500,000 in revenue, and your tax that you got to pay on that is 10%, which is pretty standard for companies, especially if you're here in California. You are going to have to pay $50,000 in taxes, right? Or it's most likely more. I put 10% because it's the bare minimum, and depending on the state, but it's just to put an example. This could very well be 20%. It could go up to 500 or 50%. Uh, so just for this scenario right here, we are just gonna put a 10%, right? To make the math a little bit simpler, right? So say you gotta pay five or $50,000 in taxes, and you're like, oh shit, I can pay for it, or I can be smart about it. Now, when you do a tax write off, when you're spending the money and you're sending the IRS a certain percentage of, or you're sending them your spendings on the company, it'll decrease from the total value of here, not the total value of here. So if you spend $100,000 in tax write-offs, you are still paying the 10% of 400,000. So you're going to be paying a total of $40,000 in taxes. And the ideal world, right? Technically, if you have a $500,000 income and then you spend $500,000 in tax write-offs, since you don't have any profit margin, zero, you technically have zero profit, and you don't gotta pay taxes. Now, if you do this and you have more spendings, or the equal spendings as your income, the IRS is gonna be like kind of on you. It's gonna be like, this is kind of weird. So bear in mind, the more money you're putting onto the tax write-offs is gonna be a bit more suspicious for the IRS, especially if you're paying $0 in taxes. And now there's different ways of what's called of you kind of getting away with this in a sense, right? And bear in mind, like, this 10% doesn't matter if you're spending the full amount, because at the end of the day, 10% of zero is zero, right? So even if this we change it to 50%, right? This is gonna go up, right? Which is gonna go up to 200,000. So we'll add a zero here. This will still be 200,000, obviously, but this is still gonna be zero because you're paying all of your money or all of your income in tax write-offs in a way, right? So 500 here, it's 250, right? $250,000 in taxes, which is a crazy amount. So instead of you paying $250,000 in taxes, you pay zero in the ideal world. And how do you do this, right? Like, how do I spend all my income so that I don't gotta pay taxes? Or how do rich people do this with like multi-million dollar companies to not have to pay an insane amount? Because this is 500,000, but imagine if it's like 00000 and then million, right? Then the numbers just keep getting increasingly like stupid. So what I put here is that if you buy a $500,000 house, which I didn't put, or investment, like a house, never mind, I didn't write it. Like, for example, we're talking about starting a business relating to Airbnb, right? Technically, we can relate that to the company that we're thinking of starting, because a house would be related to an Airbnb company, right? Starting off as a different property. And if you're spending $500,000 and you're paying zero in taxes, right? Technically, you have zero money because all your income is is what's it called, being spent. But but you can technically not pay off taxes while holding on to an investment that will hold or increase the value of the $500,000. Now, I saw a lot of people with more money saying that money comes and goes, but assets will go up in value after some time. So, especially houses and especially like investments like that will go up in the future, right? So, I know I'm just kind of going in circles at this point, but you don't have to pay 500,000. This we can change it, right? Say you spend 48 or 480, right? Now if you spend 480 here, 480. Let's do quick here. So this would be 20,000. You're still only paying $10,000 in taxes, right? Now, $10,000 in taxes is way better than $250,000 in taxes. While owning a $480,000 house and still having a $10,000 uh, like margin for you to live or like start the year off with, because obviously if you spend all your money, you don't have any money unless you have other sorts of income, which we can get that into that later on, because a big thing that people with money will tell you is that you don't want to have just one sort of income, because things like this will happen where you you're spending or investing everything, and then you have no money. So I mean, uh I want to talk about a few ways into uh taxing off your, or like increasing the tax write-offs on your company that can be kind of silly, right? Like for example, if you go to Uber Eats right now, or you go to DoorDash, or you go to like just Uber in general, um, I want to pull it up for you guys to see. I have the option of actually putting if it's gonna be a personal ride, or if it's gonna be a business ride. Now I don't want to like show all my information here, but let's see. Do you see that? Boom, business, personal. Now you can technically tax write off your food, Uber rides, and small shit like that, as long as you can prove it's for your business, right? If you are like Uber Eats food to your house, and you have it on like business mode, and you have all your receipts ready to go and present it to the IRS at the end of the year, if you spent like $20,000 in food that year and it's all through Uber Eats, it is way easier for you to prove that than it is to like go into a restaurant. That's why a lot of people rather, like with money, rather do it online like that than what's called than go to restaurants or whatnot. Now you got to prove that this has to do with your company, right? So like if you're a YouTuber, if you're mentioning what type of food you're eating, you can actually write that off your taxes. And so it just gets kind of crazy on what you can do, right? Like if you own an Airbnb restaurant, anything like of the house can be a tax write-off. So every time you go to the grocery store, like food, like toilet paper, like anything that you can really think of, you can save all of that and then use it as a tax write-off as well. So you don't have to spend all your money at the end of the year. You can technically uh, put on um, your expenses throughout the year, so that maybe you don't have to spend as much towards the end of the year, right? So if you spend, say, you spend $100,000 in miscellaneous and buy a $380,000 investment thingy, like a house, right? It'll be up to 480, while still maintaining the. So if you have 100,000, you don't have to spend those that extra 100,000 in the house if you don't have the money, because obviously this $500,000 in income will you will not have this towards the end of the year, right? Like this money will go down with your business expenses, and that's why tax write-off exists. So say your business expenses are 100,000, right? So say out of these 500,000, 100,000 is business expenses, and you have $400,000 of what's called of profit. Then you can technically only pay or deduct 100,000 out of your taxes, but you're still paying $200,000 if it's 50%. Now, if you buy the extra house on top of your $100,000, if you manage to spend close to your earnings, you're only gonna have to pay $10,000 in taxes, while uh, kind of reasoning your expenses throughout the year because it has a purpose, and at the same time owning a valuable asset towards the end of the year. There you go. It's a little bit hard to understand, but I think uh, I'm putting the point across on how this works. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the scheme of it, right? And for me, it made it easier to understand why big companies spend millions and millions of dollars in like paintings, like art, right? You see a painting that's shit, but got sold for like $20 million, and the whole reason is this, right? If you spend the painting for 20 million, this in taxes will not be as much, and then towards the end of the day, that painting will go up or maintain its value that they can sell later on and not have to pay taxes because they sold it, and it's whatever, or yeah. It's they'll do that, yeah. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. I know this is a shorter podcast, but it's a pretty interesting one. So just I wanted to throw out there that if you have any suggestions and interesting topics for me to talk about, even if it's like little segments like this, I would like to do it once in a while, because I think it's kind of cool that I get to research these type of things. Um, just let me know in the comments. Let me know through message or whatever, and I will talk about it. If it's actually something interesting. So that being said, I will see you guys and have a good one.